Welcome to Mind Research Rewired. We unveil scientific truths to transform confusion into clear thinking. Unlock a sharper, more effective you based on proven research. Subscribe now and elevate your life.
What if the very thing keeping you up at night, like that dwindling runway, the skyrocketing server costs, just the sheer panic sitting heavy in your chest at 2 a.m., what if that is actually the exact biological fuel you need for your next major breakthrough?
I mean, it is a complete reversal of how we're taught to view business challenges, right?
Really?
We're conditioned to see a lack of resources as this fatal deficit, like a wall we simply cannot climb over. But the latest psychological research is proving that severe constraint is actually a profound biological and psychological catalyst.
Exactly. And if you are an ambitious founder listening to this right now, you're building a brand from the ground up, trying to scale some complex technical product, and fighting a daily war against limitations today is going to completely rewire how you look at the resources you don't have.
Oh, absolutely.
We're doing a deep dive into a brand new 2025 doctoral thesis from Young Cupping University. It's by researcher Rita Ijaz, and it's titled Entrepreneurial Resourcefulness: The Role of Emotions and the Community.
Such a fascinating paper.
Right. And our mission today is to really dig into the actual mechanics of why severe constraints and the messy, aggressive emotions that come with them are actually the hidden engine of unprecedented innovation.
Yeah, and to get to that psychological engine, we first have to look at how the literature actually defines resourcefulness, because it is radically different from the standard definition.
How so?
Well, the thesis frames entrepreneurial resourcefulness not as like a static trait that you're born with, but as a boundary-breaking behavior.
Boundary break.
Right. It's the deliberate, dynamic process of bringing what little you have to bear and deploying those limited elements to generate completely unexpected sources of value.
Yeah.
It's really about challenging normative boundaries.
Okay, I love that. But let's look at the reality of the startup ecosystem right now.
Sure.
Because every founder I talk to secretly, or well, not so secretly, believes that if they just landed a massive VC check, literally everything would be easier.
Oh, of course they do.
Right. And if you look at companies like Uber or OpenAI, I mean, they scaled by throwing billions of dollars at their problems. They just flooded the zone with capital. So, devil's advocate here, doesn't having abundant, almost infinite resources ultimately provide the greatest advantage? Because you can just buy your way out of friction.
It seems intuitive, it really does. But the research points to a very different outcome for the vast majority of ventures.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Unmanaged abundance frequently leads to catastrophic waste. The text highlights that when founders suddenly have plentiful resources, they inherently abandon the creative processes that actually got them there in the first place.
Wow, so the money makes them lazy.
Exactly. To survive their own wealth, founders actually have to force artificial constraints on themselves. They have to rigorously implement lean startup principles like quick experimentation, validated learning, incremental development.
Because if they don't,
Because when you remove the natural friction of constraint, you foster a purely resource-driven mindset.
so instead of inventing like a clever organic viral loop to acquire users, you just lazily double your ad spend on a poorly converting campaign.
Yes, exactly. You just throw money at the symptom instead of engineering a cure for the disease. The constraint is what forces the engineering.
Man, that makes me think of the precision required in high-level apparel design.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Like, imagine you are a fashion designer and you have a massive warehouse full of infinite, incredibly expensive silk.
Right, just endless rolls of it.
Endless. The stakes are incredibly low, right? You cut corners on the pattern, your stitching gets a little sloppy, and you don't really push the boundaries of the silhouette because, well, if you mess up, you just go and roll another 100 yards of silk.
Right, the abundance literally removes the forcing function of creativity.
Exactly. The risk is gone, and with it, the necessity for innovation just vanishes.
But the literature focuses on the exact opposite scenario. The thesis relies heavily on the French anthropologist Lévi-Strauss's concept of bricolage.
Bricolage.
Yeah, in severely constrained environments, founders have to be bricoleurs.
With bricolage being like the act of making do with whatever scraps are currently at hand, right?
Exactly. But it actually goes way deeper than just making do. It is an act of recombination.
Recombination.
Yeah, so going back to your apparel metaphor, if you only have disparate scraps on the cutting room floor, like a piece of rigid leather, some frayed denim, maybe a little bit of canvas, you literally cannot use traditional tailoring methods.
Because they just won't fit together normally.
Right. You are physically forced to invent a radically new type of seam or a completely novel geometric pattern just to hold those conflicting materials together. The structural innovation only happens because you are using scraps.
Oh man, that is so powerful.
And in business, founders pair this bricolage with frugality, which is meticulously conserving resources for the long term, and bootstrapping, where you actively avoid external market dependencies.
So you find alternative non-market ways to manage your runway.
Precise.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because structurally, this makes total sense to me. The scraps force the innovation. But as human beings, we hate constraint.
Oh, we despise it.
It is incredibly stressful. How does a founder actually execute this brilliant boundary-breaking bricolage when they are stressed out of their mind and the bank account is literally hitting zero?
It's a great question.
Because the prevailing advice in the entrepreneurial space is always, protect your peace, stay positive, manifest success.
And that prevailing advice is precisely what this thesis challenges.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Through a framework called Emotional Entrepreneurial Resourcefulness, or EOR.
EOR. Okay.
EOR introduces the reality that resource management is a deeply emotional, psychologically heavy process. It is not a sterile spreadsheet exercise. The way you deploy resources is driven directly by your emotional state.
But wait, if the goal is to be wildly creative and build a new geometric pattern out of scraps, how are you supposed to do that while experiencing the sheer panic of impending failure?
Well, the text drops a completely counterintuitive finding here. Negative emotions, specifically anger, frustration, and fear, are widely misunderstood as roadblocks.
They aren't roadblocks.
No. In extreme resource-constrained environments, those negative emotions actually act as a biological thrust.
A biological thrust. Okay, explain the mechanism there. How does panic turn into productivity?
So, demanding resource-scarce environments overburden the founder, generating a highly negative emotional state. Biologically, this triggers an autonomic response in the brain, heavily involving the amygdala.
Which is our threat detection center, right?
Exactly. Usually, we associate the amygdala with the instinct to just, run away or freeze.
Fight or flight.
Right. But when a founder is trapped by constraints and running isn't an option, the brain enters what psychologists call a secondary appraisal stage.
Okay, what happens in that stage?
The brain evaluates the threat, the dwindling runway, the angry investors, and recognizes that survival requires a complex solution, not just physical escape. So it then routes that raw, stress-induced adrenaline away from panic and straight into the prefrontal cortex, the problem-solving center.
That is wild.
It triggers a hyper-focused cognitive overdrive. It pushes entrepreneurs to violently tear down existing boundaries to find solutions for their survival.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have actually seen this exact mechanism play out in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know a founder who spent 6 grueling months writing this incredibly dense, highly technical grant proposal for an unproven clean tech startup. I mean, they bet everything on it.
That's a lot of pressure.
Tons. And they received a rejection letter. Just a standard cold one-page no.
Ugh. That is the ultimate resource constraint hitting all at once.
Total devastation. Right. But they didn't get sad. They got furious. Like pure, unadulterated frustration. And instead of going to sleep or, venting about it on the internet, that anger fueled this manic late-night hustle.
The biological thrust in action.
Literally. They stayed up until 4 a.m., pacing the room, completely aggressively tearing apart their pitch deck. Their brain, fueled by that secondary appraisal overdrive you just described, suddenly saw patterns they had missed for 6 entire months.
Wow.
They realized the grant committee didn't understand the tech because the narrative was just too dry. So, driven purely by the thrust of that rejection rage, they creatively restructured the entire pitch using a highly unconventional, emotionally driven narrative.
And did it work?
They pitched it to a different board the following week and secured double the initial funding.
See, that is exactly it. The negative emotion in that story wasn't emotional baggage pulling them down. It was the absolute engine of their innovation.
They used the adrenaline and the threat to fuel the bricolage.
Perfectly said.
But I feel like that raises a massive question. Once a founder is flooded with this negative emotional thrust, where does that energy actually go? But you can take that anger and use it to build a brilliant new pitch deck, sure. Or you could take that anger and just completely burn out, isolate yourself, and smash your laptop against a wall.
Very true. And this is where the thesis introduces the agentic perspective.
The agentic perspective.
Yes. Emotions are not just weather patterns that happen to you while you stand helplessly in the rain.
Right.
You have agency. When the pressure is peaking and that biological thrust is activated, founders have to make a very deliberate, strategic decision between two diverging paths of execution.
And those paths are?
Path one is self-reliant resourcefulness. This is the instinct to look entirely inward. You isolate yourself, you hoard whatever limited scraps you have, and you try to fix the massive structural problem all by yourself.
Okay.
Path two is joint resourcefulness. This is the deliberate choice to mobilize your community, your network, and external stakeholders to find a collaborative solution to the constraint.
Okay, I'm going to push back on path two being the optimal choice, simply because of how the startup ecosystem operates in reality.
Oh, tell me.
Founders hide their constraints because we are absolutely terrified of looking weak.
It's true.
I mean, if I tell my lead engineer that we only have 4 weeks of runway left, they might start looking for another job.
Right.
If I tell my investors I don't know how to solve a supply chain bottleneck, they might pull their support entirely. The mythology we are sold is the lone wolf genius.
The Steve Jobs in the garage myth.
Exactly. The founder who locks themselves in a room, is completely self-reliant, takes on all the stress, and only emerges when the product is perfect. Asking for help just feels like signaling failure.
What's fascinating here is that fear of signaling weakness is incredibly real, but the data in the thesis actively dismantles the lone wolf myth as a sustainable strategy.
It does.
Yes. When researchers studied founders operating in micro-community incubators and deeply constrained environments, they found that relying solely on self-reliant resourcefulness leads to rapid burnout and catastrophic failure.
Oh, wow. The ventures that survive and thrive do so because joint resourcefulness creates a powerful psychological phenomenon called collective psychological ownership, or CPO.
Collective psychological ownership. How does that actually work in practice, like on a day-to-day level?
Well, when you drop the facade of having all the answers and you transparently share your constraints and resources with external stakeholders, whether that's early customers, fellow founders, or local community members, a fundamental shift happens.
Okay.
By bringing them into the messy process of solving the problem, they begin to view your venture as their own. The emotional attachment spreads from just the founder to the community.
Wait, it's like the IKEA effect, but for building a startup.
The IKEA effect, yes, exactly.
Like when people help build the furniture, they value it more. So by admitting you have a massive constraint and asking a peer or a customer for insight, you aren't showing weakness, you are actually recruiting them emotionally. Exactly. You are fostering a social normative sense of collectiveness. You brainstorm together, you share fragmented resources, you combine your networks. The thesis refers to this dynamic as getting more from many.
Getting more from many. I love that.
The community voluntarily steps in to share the psychological and operational burden. And this collective sense of ownership accelerates the venture's survival and innovation far beyond what a single, isolated founder could ever achieve in their garage.
That completely flips the script. By trying to be the stoic lone wolf and hiding your problems, you are actually starving your venture of its most powerful asymmetric asset, the psychological investment and combined brain power of your community.
You are artificially limiting your scraps.
Oh.
Right. When you engage in joint resourcefulness, you pool your scraps with the community's scraps, and suddenly the bricolage can yield something massive.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the person listening right now?
Right. Let's get into it.
We've covered some incredibly deep psychological theory today. From the mechanics of bricolage and the biological thrust of the amygdala to the agentic choice of building collective psychological ownership.
That's a lot.
But if you are a founder driving to your office right now or pacing your living room trying to figure out how to make payroll next month, theory isn't enough. We need to map this directly onto your day. Let's move into our tactical breakdown, the Do It Today segment.
Let's do it. Let's make the mindset shift immediately actionable.
Action 1, audit and bricolage. Stop waiting for the ideal conditions. Stop waiting for that elusive VC check to magically appear so you can buy your way out of the problem.
Yes.
Do a 10-minute audit today of the seemingly useless or underused resources currently at your disposal. I'm talking about old software subscriptions you forgot you had, informal LinkedIn connections you haven't spoken to in 2 years, or repurposed marketing materials.
Whatever you have on hand.
Right. Take one major bottleneck you are facing today and force a bricolage solution using only those scraps.
I love that. It forces the brain to practice that boundary-breaking behavior on a micro level. You literally build the muscle of seeing value where others see waste.
Action 2. Weaponize your frustration. Building a venture is a roller coaster. You are going to get bad news, maybe even today. A major client will churn, a critical bug will crash your site, an investor will pass on your pitch.
It's inevitable.
The next time you feel that spike of fear, anger, or frustration regarding a constraint, do not try to quickly vent it away. Do not jump on Twitter to complain.
Because complaining dissipates the biological thrust. It wastes the cognitive overdrive.
Exactly. Recognize that negative emotional state as the amygdala shifting you into the secondary appraisal stage. Take that specific, aggressive, hyper-focused energy and immediately channel it into a creative brainstorming session.
Get to the whiteboard.
Sit down at a whiteboard and weaponize the anger to tear down your own assumptions and find a completely new angle on the problem. Ride the wave of the emotion rather than letting it drown you.
Such good advice. And finally, action 3, build collective psychological ownership. Break the lone wolf habit today. Do not hide your biggest constraint in the dark.
Bring it into the light.
Reach out to one community member, one trusted external stakeholder, or a fellow founder. Transparently share a specific limitation you are facing and genuinely ask for their insight or feedback. Take that very first uncomfortable step from being fiercely self-reliant to initiating joint resourcefulness.
You're starting the process of making your venture their venture too. You're intentionally building CPO, and you are getting more from many.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, it is crucial to look at where this research is heading next.
Oh, right.
Because Rita Ijes explicitly points to a future agenda for this field of study, focusing on what she calls the dark side of resourcefulness.
The dark side. Like where the superpower becomes a liability.
Exactly. Consider what happens when this scarcity-driven, scrappy, emotionally fueled mindset becomes a permanent psychological trap. Imagine your venture finally scales. You achieve abundance, you secure the massive funding, you hire the robust staff. But neurologically, your brain is still stuck in severe survival mode.
Oh, man. I know founders like this.
Right. Could your absolute superpower, your ability to operate on scraps and weaponize negative emotional thrust, eventually become your biggest blind spot?
Because you can't turn it off.
When you actually need to slow down, implement standard operating procedures, and calmly optimize, you might instead manufacture chaos just to feel that familiar biological thrust. It's a transition every ambitious founder needs to actively guard against.
That is a chilling thought. Surviving the war of the early days, but never actually learning how to live and operate in peacetime.
It is the ultimate paradox of the successful founder.
All right, founders, this is where we turn the spotlight directly onto you. I have 2 vital questions I want you to sit with today, and I want you to drop your unfiltered answers down in the comments right now.
Let's hear them.
Number 1, are you secretly running from the negative emotions? The anger, the fear, the raw frustration that could actually be the biological fuel for your next major breakthrough.
Ooh.
And number 2, where in your business are you stuck in an exhausting, self-reliant, lone wolf mode, terrified of looking weak, when you should be actively building collective psychological ownership with your community?
Honest answers to those 2 questions are often what separates the founders who burn out in isolation from the founders who build lasting legacies.
You know it.
Yeah.
So get in the comments, let us know how you are weaponizing your constraints today. And hey, if this deep dive rewired your mindset even a little bit, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel.
Please do.
It tells the algorithm we're doing something right. And it supports us in bringing you more elite mindset rewiring insights straight from the bleeding edge of psychological research.
It's been an incredible journey unpacking the true mechanics of resourcefulness today.
Remember, having infinite fabric just makes you sloppy. Take the scraps, feel the frustration, and go tailor a masterpiece. We will see you on the next deep dive. Keep building.